Hi, welcome to Artcasters. Sorry, I started recording and there was this lag, so you probably caught a lot of us like looking around, kind of bored. So Artcasters is our weekly art show that alternates between myself and Scott Serkland's channel, where we discuss like freelance illustration, cartooning, the struggles of making creator-owned work, and other topics like conventions, which is what we're going to talk about today because Scott just got back from a convention. So anyhow, I'm here with Scott. So Scott, where can we find your work?
Hey, you can find my work, and if you go and find my work on YouTube or wherever else, or on Facebook or wherever, I promise it won't be as fuzzy as I'm looking right now. I'm still having camera issues, but one of these days I'm going to take care of it. But I'll be screen sharing most of this video, so you won't. It'll be a little better. But anyway, so yeah, you can find me on YouTube at Circworks. You can find me at Facebook, Instagram, Circworks. My website is Circworks, and or you can go to madsciencesupplycompany.com. And that's where you can find me.
Awesome. And then our special guest, because we have a rotating third guest chair every week, and our special guest is Gaz. Gaz, where can we find you, sir?
Hey, it's me coming to you from the rotating chair. It's me, Gaz, or Gazbot, which is how you will find me online. I've got my own YouTube channel, as these gentle people do, as well as an Etsy store and an Instagram and all the usual artist things you might find. You look for Gazbot, you find this guy.
All right. And so hordes of pixels have been attacking Scott's screen, but so we'll probably be seeing a lot of live streaming of his awesome artwork while he's working on it. But so Scott, you just got back from Phoenix Comic Fest. I understand they're not calling it Con anymore.
That is true, and next year it will not be called Phoenix Comic Fest.
Oh,
it will be called Phoenix Fan Fusion. Because people, I guess Phoenix Comic Fest didn't roll off the tongue. People didn't like it, but then they changed the name and they let everyone know before the convention started through the halls on the intercom. They said next year it's going to be Phoenix Fan Fusion, and there was just a roar of boos.
But I'm a big fan of cheesy alliterations.
No, it's like a weird thing because. At first, I was the same way because I had heard it previous through like a press conference because there's always drama at this show, and this year was kind of no exception. But because the previous night and so in the past 4 years, there has always been a problem with the alarm going off, like a false alarm, and it's not somebody pulling it or whatever. It's like some malfunction or something, and so. What is it? Not last year, but 2 previous years, the floor was evacuated. Usually, like towards the end of the show before they closed the hall, and so they evacuate everyone. And then those previous years, when they brought people back, they kind of extended the floor show, a little longer. But I don't know why it keeps doing that. Last year we didn't have the alarm, but we had the armed gunman that was going to kill. Was it Jason David Frank? Is that
David Frank? Yeah.
Yeah, the Green Power Ranger. The guy, for whatever reason, did not like him, so he was kind of mentally unstable. So he was going to go dress up as the Punisher and kill him, and they apprehended the guy, thankfully, before it happened. So there was that, and then this year there was another fire alarm, and fortunately for people exhibiting on the floor, it was after the floor was shut down for the day. But all the after hours programming and everything was affected. So anyway, I was just paying attention to that, and that's when they announced the name change. And at first I was like, wow, why are they doing this? And I don't really know. I'm not sure how I feel about that name. But then I started to think about it. It was like, because I had always said when they first changed it from Phoenix Comic Con to Phoenix Comic Fest, because if anyone doesn't know, the only one that can use Comic Con now is San Diego Comic Con or anything that they're affiliated with.
I thought they lost that lawsuit.
No, they did not. Salt Lake City lost that. I don't know if there may be like appeals or something. I don't know, but as far as that first round or whatever, yeah, Salt Lake lost that. So
Just because I just did a show that was called that it was a small show, but it had Comic-Con in the title for sure, and that was like
they
last
may have
week.
not got around to changing it yet or whatever. Like it was sort of preemptive on Phoenix Comic Cons. Because the other thing I thought that they would be able to keep using it because they didn't spell it out Comic Con. It was all one word, Comic Con, with only one C. I mean, in the whatever. So I thought that they were going to be able to keep it, but they just I guess they figured sooner rather than later change it because they'd have to eventually. And I always thought, well, why don't they just call it Phoenix Fan Con or something like that? Because really, I mean, these conventions haven't really been about comics in so long that it's like, why does it still say Comic Con? Because they don't really have much to do with comics anymore. But so that was.
Should be called Phoenix Comic Gone.
Oh boy!
That was my dad joke for the night. Sorry, guys.
But anyway, the more I think about it, the more I warmed up to it because there's some alliteration there. Phoenix Fan Fest, it's kind of flows. Phoenix. That's their other show, but Phoenix Fan Fusion. So I guess what they're trying to do is that way they can brand because since San Diego can brand their thing as Comic Cons, all that stuff, and there's different people that use Expo and different people that use this or that. So I think they're trying to use Fusion as sort of their thing. So anything with that Fusion brand, and their idea was that it's basically just a coming together of all these different fandoms and everything. So hence the Fusion. So I don't know. I think it'll take a little getting used to, but now that I think about it, I don't mind it so much.
I mean, it's actually a more accurate title, as you said, because it's about fandom more than it is about comic books.
Right. For better or for worse. But
right.
So that was that. And then I can't remember the original question was if I answered it or not, because I know we're going to be talking a lot about this convention and just what kind of the future of conventions might be or what we think's on the horizon and everything. So what was the original question then, Josh?
Well, I think it was more of just like what your experience was like and, what your gauge on the convention was like.
Right.
Like, I have a whole bunch of questions about it.
Yeah. Well, I'll let you ask away, but I'll just start off by saying, so, and this seems to be the case, and I think Gaz can attest to this. I think with, he's been to a few, I know you've been to a few shows, Gaz, where they change location. And usually anytime they change a location, it's usually a down year. The year after that, and it kind of takes a little while to build back up. I think that might. Go ahead, yes. Sorry.
Well, I agree with you, but the two shows that come to mind when you say that are Alternative Press Expo, which changed location twice since I've been going. And the first year they changed, it was a little bit down. And then the second year they changed to San Jose downtown, which should have been a better location because it was like right in the middle of town and people could, you get that walk through traffic, and it was terrible. And I went back the next year and it was worse. And I skipped it this year and I hear it wasn't very good either. So they moved and it still has been bad. Like they never recovered. The other one that I think of is San Francisco Comic-Con, which I did 2 years ago and last year. And 2 years ago it was in San Francisco. And there were some weird issues with the laws in San Francisco, which I've now become aware that there's a lot of weird union rules and things that other cities don't necessarily have. So that's why there aren't a lot of conventions in San Francisco, even though there should be, But despite all that and the weird things I had to jump through, I did very well. It was very well attended, and I made possibly the most money I've ever made at a show. So the next year, I told my buddy that lives down south, oh my God, come up. We'll get, an actual vendor booth. We'll split it. It's going to be great. And he did, and they moved it. It was still in San Francisco, but it was at a different convention center across town for some reason. And it was lame and bad. And not just for me and him. Like I talked to a lot of other people, even the celebrities. Like I was talking to the photographer who does it, and he's like, yeah, like weren't really making the money we're supposed to make. And so we didn't lose money, but it was like a regular kind of crummy show as opposed to a good show or previously the best show ever. This year, I didn't get a table because I'm going to be out of town, but they moved it again. And now it's in Oakland, but they're still calling it the San Francisco Con. And so everyone's like, it should be the Oakland Con. So we'll see how that goes.
Yeah. So, but I think it's sort of a similar situation with Phoenix, not that they moved or anything, but with the kind of that whole thing that happened last year with the armed gunmen and the security, and because they were trying to course correct as it was happening, So in that, they had to basically, or they banned all prop weapons, and that pissed a lot of people off. And that basically the Ultra Sabers people, who I assume you've seen them at conventions, they were rejected. And they weren't back this year. So I think just all of that, and of course that affected cosplayers quite a bit. So as a result, attendance was down, from what I hear, like about 30%.
That's
so yeah, it's not good. And they addressed that. Like, I think it was because people just were not having a good show. And I talked to a lot of people, and a lot of them weren't having a very good show. I, on the other hand, had my best show ever. So
wow, awesome.
Yeah. So, and I think, and this is something to think about when obviously things that happen at conventions and attendance and all that stuff, and all these things play a factor in how well you do. But I think there's still a lot that you can do on your. If things aren't working, there's things you need to do for yourself to change it, and that's kind of a lot of what I did, and I think that's what really helped me, because I changed a lot of things around, and a lot of things that I didn't really want to change because I was kind of stuck in my ways, and because I liked the way I was doing it. But I just said, so basically the previous year, every year since my first year, I made a little less. Like, it was weird. Previous to that, my first show was my best show.
That is weird.
And I don't know.
Goes the other way.
Yeah. And then they just and then I moved up to the booths, and from the because at first I just had the one table, and I made more of that show than I had. And then I moved to the booth, and I was at the booth for a couple years. Then I moved back to 2 Artist Alley tables. And then, so last year I had the 2 Artist Alley tables, and I was like, I don't know how I feel about doing conventions. But I'm just going to get one table this time, because I want to hold on to my spot, And so in addition to the attendance being down, I guess the number of vendors exhibiting were down as well. So, and that could have helped me, because there weren't as many
competition.
It's hard to say competition, because really everyone's competing for dollars, because there's only so many dollars. When you do a convention, you're competing with like the big superstars that are charging $150, $200 for autographs and all that kind of thing, because everyone only has so much money. But I'm not really competing so much with fan art. I am, in a way, just for the dollar thing, but that's not what I do, and that's what a lot of people do. So I'm kind of doing something different. But even with all that, a lot of other people didn't have that great of shows. I talked to some people that said they did well, like I did, but a lot of people, especially I think some of the bigger, veteran exhibitors, like with the big giant, like 4 booths together and stuff like that type of thing. But anyway, so what was I getting at?
You switched something up that you didn't want to.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So, you guys have seen my setup before, and I've done videos leading up to this. So you probably saw where, I had kind of like my underground lair, where I've got the kind of Willy Wonka type, pipes and gears and all that kind of stuff, and the conveyor belt and all this stuff that I thought was really cool and that helped stand out. I just started thinking that I think this is taking away from the artwork itself, because it's just, people don't know what to make of all it. There's just so much stuff when you go to a show, it just gets confusing. So I stripped all that away. I got rid of the conveyor belt thing, which helped in a way, because I can now, make my setup a little more compact, because I just used the black tablecloths. But what I did was I branded everything, like, in front of my tables, on the sides of my tables, on the sides of the back, everything says Mad Science Supply Company. It probably says it 6 or 7 times, throughout the booth and everything.
Yeah.
So I think that really helped people, kind of get what it is.
Right.
And anything that was confusing, like I had products that were tied to prints, and I was like, oh, you get this little lab experiment product, and it comes with this print and this and that. And sometimes people didn't want the print. They just wanted the little thing of slime or the growing brain or whatever like that. So
right.
decided to double up on those products, but I stripped them away from the prints, so the prints were just separate. And if somebody bought a lot of them, I just throw in the print, that went along with it. But so that did really well for me, separating all that stuff, and in addition to so another thing I did was when I did that gallery show last month, I had to buy all these frames. So I'm like, well, I might as well use them for something, because what else am I going to use all these frames for? So I presented all my work in frames, so it really classed them up a bit. I think that helped a lot. What else did I do? So I had I had my prints in the backdrop, but I noticed, different people, they look at artwork in different ways, so they browse your table in different ways. So in addition to having the artwork in the back, I also put out a portfolio of my artwork, even though this is the same stuff. But some people like to get a closer look, and I think that helped. But I think the number one thing that I did that really probably helped the most was, if you guys remember, after the last show, we had Jeremy early on. I'm sure Josh remembers,
yes.
But I don't know if anyone watched that episode. But anyway, so I tabled next to him last year, and he basically just had this thing where he had a bunch of postcards printed up, and he'd just be like, "Free postcard," and people would take the postcard. He says, like, "Feel free to browse. I've got prints. I've got books or comics and all this stuff." So I kind of did that in a way. But what I did was I was thinking, well, what's a postcard? I mean, I was thinking, what I decided to do was get stickers made, because I think people might kind of probably toss. I mean, some people might pin a postcard to a bulletin board or something, but for the most part, I think they're getting tossed. So I decided, I'm just going to do a sticker, and it's basically just a sticker with a variation of my branding on it. I mean, my logo and everything, and my URL. So it's advertising for one. So I basically would just be like, free sticker. And I think I probably went through about 800 of them maybe. Oh, yeah. And out of those, I mean, there may have been like 5 people that said no thanks. So and it was just a good way to just start conversation, and it wasn't like, I mean, I always kind of waited for the eye contact or somebody to actually like look at the booth. But sometimes people kind of stand back, they're like halfway in the aisle, and they're looking up at your booth. But I was just like, free sticker, and they would walk up and take the sticker. And right then it's like, you got them. At least you got their attention. If not, not always to sell, but you get their attention. And it was just like that with everything. That sticker thing really worked really well. And from there, I just kind of went into my pitch. I was like, so everything I do is mad science. If you're looking to take over the world, I'm your one-stop shop, that type of thing. And I said, if you want to decorate your underground layer, I've got prints. If you want to look stylish while taking over the world, I got bow ties, that whole thing. So, and I had different variations of that pitch. So if somebody else came by while I was doing the pitch to one person, I'd have a different version for the next person. So they're not hearing what the other person did. But, my neighbors... Yeah, my neighbors probably heard those pitches a million times, but anyway, but that I think really works. So just a lot of different things that I changed. I think that really helped me out. So anyway, so that was some of the stuff that I did that I changed around.
I kind of think there's a really valuable takeaway just from what I'm gathering, and something I've observed too. It's been a long time since I've done conventions, and Gaz, I want to hear you touch on this too, after. But I've noticed that I would have really good conventions at really good sales at shows where, and I would inevitably meet cartoonists. It would be like my best show, and cartoonists would be like, it's terrible. Nobody's in. Nobody came in. It's terrible traffic. It's a terrible show, And I've noticed that more and more, the more I convention, the more I'd notice that was pretty common. There usually wasn't a convention where somebody wasn't saying it was terrible. And then there's conventions that are notoriously terrible, like Ape was brought up, and ever since it changed location the first time, it's just been notorious. I haven't met a cartoonist who had a good experience.
It also changed management. It went back to the old management who used to own it, before Comic-Con International, and so everyone thought that would be good. And I don't know exactly what they're doing. I don't want to say it's their fault, because I don't know what challenges they're facing.
Yeah.
But once aside from the move, Comic-Con International doesn't have it, and part of what would get attention, aside from the bigger machine pushing it, if you had a ticket to San Diego Comic-Con, you could get into Ape for free. So there was like a huge incentive for everybody that had tickets already. Just why not go to Ape, and most of those people are local anyway. So
Yeah.
So aside from the change of venue and aside from new management, you lost a lot of people that would come for free every year.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. So the thing I was taking away from what you were saying, it's that you kind of take a little bit of responsibility for it yourself, and like that because of the fact that you changed some stuff up, you saw a pretty decent increase in sales. And like to me, that's a really good sign. Now, that's not how it's always going to work for everyone, and I'm sure you could do your best and do everything right in the sense of like displaying and engaging people as they walk by and still have a terrible show. I mean, that's inevitably going to happen.
Right.
But my point is, it just seems like a good takeaway of like especially, going into conventions, like when you're hearing other cartoonists being like, sales are terrible and stuff like that, and kind of almost being defeatistic about it. It's just important to remember that like every show can be an opportunity, and some of the worst shows I've had were like great for other people, and some of the best shows I had were like terrible for the majority of people I talked to. So, I guess I'm just saying, like, I think that's a cool thing. One thing I wanted to know, because I know you were talking about this before, but you also kind of pared down what you were showing, right? Like, did you kind of limit your options?
There were a few things that I took out. Let's see. So I used to have these trading card sets, and they were these mix and match build. You could build these different characters with them. They were like, one card would be the feet, one would be the torso, one would be the head, and I had 3 different sets, and you can mix them and match them, and those kind of work because they were interactive, because I had some on the table and kids would come by and play with them. But it kind of took up some real estate on my table. So I kind of got rid of anything that was kind of taking up too much space. I kind of got rid of, but I do kind of want to revisit those. And I'm trying to get my son to help me come up with an idea for a game of those and sell them in just like a box, like with the game. So they don't take up so much space and have, I could just sell a box of these cards and instruction. Because my neighbor, she sold like fan art and stuff, but she also had her own original tarot cards, and she was selling tons of those tarot cards like crazy. So, that's something I want to revisit. But yeah, I was trying to, and that kind of leads me to some of the things that I will probably change for next year. Like, it was weird because I had built these. I also built some new displays, and one of the things I was trying to do, in addition to, all that foam stuff that I had before with the pipes and all that kind of stuff, that took up a lot of space, and just transporting that stuff and putting it up and everything took a lot longer, because I just want to streamline things. But the other thing I did was I created some like these wooden displays that kind of are interlocking. So they're all flat when you get them, but they've got little like slots that they slot together with. So I can kind of build them, and they're bulky when they're together, but you can break them down into flat things. So those work really well. But one of them, I had one that had all my lab products on, and those did really well, especially on Saturday. I was selling those like crazy. The other set had 3 things. It had a row of like 5 different button packs, and I sold a decent amount of buttons. I had a row of my sticker packs. I think I sold one of those, and then it had my bow ties on it, and I think I sold 1 bow tie, which those are decently priced items, and sometimes they sell more than that. So I don't know that I would get rid of those, but I might rethink that, because that whole display, and it's kind of like the 80-20 rule, where you want to focus on, the things that are working for you. And even if, so the stickers and the buttons, they weren't huge sellers, but that whole display took up a decent amount of space. So I may try to figure out something else to do with those that don't take up as much space, like maybe a spinner thing that people can spin the buttons around, and it takes up limited amount of space or something like that. Nice. So and reserve that space for something that does sell better. You know?
I think that's what you're describing is a specific example of a broader issue that we all struggle with. I know I do, where, and this is something that usually doesn't happen at your first convention, but after you've been doing it a while, you have a variety of product and you have a variety of subject matter, and some sells well, some sells not so great, but the ability to display it all so that everyone knows what you have is something that is really tough. Because like you said, if you show, oh, here's like 5 buttons I have, but I've got 30 other designs. If somebody's looking at the buttons, you could bring out a book or a box to show them. But if
That's
somebody's
true.
walking by and they only see those 5 buttons and none of them interest them, then they're not gonna like look. And I have some buttons, but I have that problem with prints too, because I have a few different subject matters and I try to represent them all, but it's like, oh, maybe somebody noticed I had like, my comic, and they noticed I did Godzilla work, but they didn't see my Ninja Turtles as the Misfits prints, which they would have liked, but they didn't see it and they didn't stop long enough to look through the book that has them all. And so it's a balancing act, and I don't have the answer here. I struggle with this what I try to do is just represent each like theme of thing I might have, and then if I notice someone looking at it, I say, oh, there's more in the book if you like Ninja Turtles, or oh, do you like comics? I got my comics over here. But there still has to be a certain level of engagement where they come close enough to talk to them, or they slow down enough to talk to them. And if I always worry that if I don't pick the right Godzilla print to grab someone's attention, I got 20 others that they're never gonna see.
Right. But what I find is that people do like to, different, and again, it comes down to different tastes, and not everyone likes this, but a lot of people do like to browse, like flip through stuff, So, you can get more people in there, but like you said, first you have to pull them in.
Right. And I've always had a book that has everything, and then I have certain choice things on display. But not everyone wants to look through the book. But I've had the other problem, whereas if it gets a little busy and someone's looking through the book, someone else might not want to wait or might not feel comfortable looking over their shoulder. And so I've seen people want to look at the book, like I could tell by their body language, and I'll be like, oh, hey, how you doing? And I'll engage them a little bit. And they're like, oh, yeah, I just want to look at the book. And then I don't want to rush the person looking. And then that second person might walk away. So it's like, like what do I have 2 books? But that's ridiculous. Like there's only so much you could do in that situation. One thing I've thought about doing, which isn't a solve all for general conventions, but I sometimes do specialized conventions. Like I will be going to a Godzilla convention in Chicago this year. I'm going to be going to 2 different Power Rangers specific conventions. And previously I would bring all my stuff and just sort of push whatever is popular for that convention. But I think when I go to the Godzilla convention, I'm not going to bring anything other than Godzilla prints and my book, because it's a kaiju book, so it's relevant. And then when I go to the Power Rangers ones, same thing. I'm not even going to bring my Godzilla stuff, probably just Power Rangers. Maybe I'll have a few Godzilla in the back just in case, but no Ninja Turtles, no nothing else, no zombies, nothing. But my worry about if I did that at a regular Comic-Con or a regular show, it literally is like, oh, this guy just does Godzilla. And if they don't like Godzilla, that's it. Even though I do other stuff, they would keep walking. So for a specialized show, it could work to my advantage. But for a general show, I don't know how to quickly convey everything I can do.
Yeah, and that kind of leads me to something that I wanted to mention that works for, I don't do this because I like to do all kinds of different things. You kind of seen my booth and the kind of items that I sell. But one thing that I tell people is that if you narrow what you do down, you're going to sell more of whatever that one thing is. If you're doing one thing, you're going to sell more of that. Like I didn't sell a lot of comics there, but if I was there only selling my comic, I would have sold a lot more comics. But
yes,
there's 2 different ways to go about it. Because a lot of people say, yeah, you can't make money selling comics at a comic convention, but I know people that just sell comics and they sell comics. So
that's interesting you say that. I did free comic book day at my local shop, and the way they do it, it's almost like a mini comic convention. Like there's lines out the door for hours. I was one of like 5 artists they had there. They had like cosplay and balloon twisters. Like it was like really a mini comic convention. And I had my prints and I had my comics. And I sold some of my comics. I sold a lot more of my prints, which is usually how it goes. There was a guy there who was a writer of a comic, and he had the only thing on his table, he had the 3 issues of his comic, a print of his comic, and maybe one other thing, but related to his comic. And part of it was because he's a writer, not an artist. So the only art he had was what his partner had done or what he had commissioned people to do for him. And he sold a bunch of comics. Now, obviously it could be people were more interested in his subject matter than mine. They thought the art was better, whatever. That's all possible. But all things being equal, I have had this experience before of having a neighbor just selling comics inevitably sells more comics than I do. But here's the rub. I think he sold like a lot, like 20 or 30 comics in a day, which I think is a lot for like a little, free comic book day thing. I think I sold, yeah, that's what I'm saying. I think I sold like 5. So he did way better selling comics. However, I made a pretty good amount of money because I sold a bunch of prints. And now the comic store was nice enough to give us these tables for free. So he didn't lose any money, but he didn't make anywhere near what I made. Now for a free comic book day, that's fine. But if you go to a comic show, a comic convention, you're gonna have to pay for a table. And a cheap table is usually $50, $100 on up. So if you go to a convention only selling comics and you sell 20 copies, and let's say you make $2 or $3 each, that might not even cover your table. So it's a tough, because I know Josh has talked about when your big book comes out, you just want to push the book. And I think that's smart because that means you will absolutely sell more of your book, but you might not make enough money to pay for the table or like come out with a profit.
Yeah. And I think I'm completely in agreement with the idea of it being kind of an on the fence thing, because I think it's just sheer, like it's a business thing. It's like, so if you want to, like, for instance, in LA, there's a lot of like eateries and stuff like that are like really well known for making food. Mm-hmm. There's not a ton of places that have like a huge name that are well known that have like the endless menu.
Right.
They're well known for like specific things. And
that's
so
something Gordon Ramsay on his show, I've seen it. He always yells at people for that. Why do you have 15,000 things? You have lobster and omelets. Choose one and specialize.
But I mean, you got to consider, like, even if it's somebody perusing through a book, there is also the chance that somebody is looking at so many prints that initial engagement that brought them to even open the book might actually die the longer they're looking. Like, so there is this thing to be said for like, people tend to, like, when it's a psychological thing, but people, when given too many options, tend to actually start devaluing their choices after they've made them. They feel less good about it. And they did this whole test with like kids. I think I've gone over it, like talked about this, but they did this test with kids and like candy, and they give them like 2 options, and the kids that picked like felt really good. And then like the same test they gave kids like 20 options, and then the kids had more trouble deciding. And then once they made their decision, most of them went back on their decision, and none of them were happy with their decision at the end.
Because they felt they made the wrong decision because there was
exactly because there were too many options. And so it just from a sales perspective, it's like, and don't get me wrong, that doesn't mean that it always works out that way. It's just something I've been thinking about, because from a sales perspective, it's not a bad idea to kind of try to limit it. And from a marketing perspective, like really targeting your marketing is not a bad idea. It's never a bad idea. So
no, I agree. Yeah.
But from like a monetary perspective, I think it's a much longer game. It's a longer game. Well, and I think if I were just selling floppies, I wouldn't make that risk, because like if I went to a convention right now with a bunch of floppies and you sell 100, you haven't even made payback.
Right. Yeah. And I only have floppies, but the guy next to me only had floppies too. But this comes a couple things we're talking about the future of cons, and we're talking in a general sense.
Yeah.
I've been slowly doing things differently, and I plan on doing things a little differently this year as well. Maybe not as extreme as Scott, but one of the things I'm going to do, I did a library con recently, and it didn't go amazing. It was only a 4-hour con. It was in the middle of the day. It was a free table, so I appreciated being invited and everything, but it was not amazing. I didn't make a lot of money. Not a lot of people were there. And after the first 2 hours, it got really dead. But afterwards, it was a similar thing where I had some comics and some prints, and I sold like 1 or 2 comics and a handful of prints. So I made a few bucks. But for the money I made, and to cost me nothing afterwards, I was like, I thought I would sell more books at a library con than I would at a normal con. And that's when I realized what I should have done was just made my table all about the books. I should have brought my cardboard cutout of the horror. I should have had prints of just the horror. And I should have had, the Life in Space book and the horror and Kid Switch, like the 4 books I have that I've done, and had nothing else. And maybe do sketches too. And if I didn't make any money, so what? It was a free table. It was 4 hours. It was like a worthwhile risk. But if I sold 20 comics, that would have been a better use of my time than making like the $70 or $80 I made all day. You know what I mean? So
Sure.
if I have the opportunity to have to do a free show again, which I may, I will just focus on my books, even though they're floppies, knowing that I will make very little money, but being okay with that because I'm only risking my time, not actual money.
That's interesting because I was talking to a friend of mine who just sells comics, and he has his own own comic book series, and he was talking about that he exhibited at a library con, and he was saying and he got a free table, and he was basically saying how well he did. He said, "Oh yeah, you got to do that." So and I was like, "Well, I got to jump on that," but I was thinking, well, just bring the normal stuff that I have. I probably have to scale it down because I usually have a couple tables, but maybe for a show like that, maybe I should just bring comics. I don't know.
I mean, well, it's up to you. But here's the other thing: the show I did, from what I've heard, it was a smaller con, and other cons in my area are more heavily attended, and people do better financially and stuff. But even if I go to one of those bigger cons, I think I'm still going to just push my book if it's a free table, because again, I'm always like, my justification for the fan art is always like, I can't afford to do this unless I'm making money. But if it's not costing me anything and it's a local show and it's just like a day of my time, then I can afford to do it. Then I can afford to take a chance, because the people I hook with my book, you have your whole mad scientist thing, so it's a little different for you. But the people I hook with my book are more likely to become fans of me and follow my art than a person who just buys an Ultraman print and maybe forgets who I am because they just like Ultraman and that's the end of that, So I'm going to try to do that. The other thing, though, is I have tried to pare down, but even though I have a lot of stuff I do, I have my books, but with my prints, I mainly have Ninja Turtles, Godzilla, and Power Rangers. I had a few other things. I had a random, couple zombies, and I had Star Wars. All of those prints that don't fit into one of those three categories, I have on clearance. I'm not printing them anymore. All the one-offs, even if I sell one every now and then, I'm like you said about the confusion and the too many choices. I still might have too many choices when it comes to like Power Rangers or whatever, but at least you could pick Turtles, Power Rangers, or Godzilla, or my comic. You have 4 basic choices. And then within that, I think it is good to have more choices, at least in those fan bases, because no matter how many Godzilla monsters I do, no matter how many Power Rangers I do, every show, someone's like, do you have this monster that I don't have? Hey, what about this Ranger? Because there's so many that if somebody wants that category, they want their favorite. And chances are I might not have it because there's so many. But the other thing I've done is in those categories, I've raised my prices the last year. I used to sell prints for $5 and $10. Now I sell them for $10 and $20. I haven't noticed it impact my sales that much. Maybe I sell a few less, but I sell them for more money, so it works out. But the 2 other things I've done with that, well, 3 things. One, all my prints now, I have my information printed on the back when I get them done. So I have. So I have cards I could give out, but anybody that gets my print has all my information on the back for sure. 2, I have bags that I used to give out, but I now have boards behind them so that if they don't want to get them framed, you could almost hang them up as they are. So I'm charging more, but they're getting a little bit more. And 3, I'm at shows unless with a few rare exceptions, at shows I try to give buy 2 get 1 free, so that I've raised the prices enough that I'm still kind of doing okay even with that sale. And in addition to the buy 2 get 1 free, and I don't have a sign up, I tell people that because they're talking to them. Hey, by the way, if you buy 2, and within those fandoms, I made a point of having multiples of 3. Like my Ninja Turtles, I have 6 Misfit banned Ninja Turtles. So if you want the whole set of 6, you're essentially getting 2 for free. You know what I mean? And I've just started doing that where I'm trying to make them all in groups of 3 to entice people to get a set of 3. And if they have choice fatigue, I don't know if I want this one or that one. Well, you get 3 for 2. And then I'll pick these 3 and they feel better about it, like they're getting a deal, which they are. But it's
I want to touch on that.
Go ahead.
So with the 6 Ninja Turtles that you have, you said you have 6, right? So how often do you get somebody that just wants the whole set, or have you?
Well, 2 of them I just did. So I haven't, I just got them printed. But the other 4, I very often sell sets of 4.
Okay. Yeah, because you said the buy 2 get 1 free. That's what I used to do. And then I decided that was another thing I changed. And I went from buy 2 get 1 free, and I sell my prints for $20.
Right.
And then there's that $40. Well, I don't. Yeah, it's still $40, and even though I got one free, I don't know. But so I changed it from buy one for 20, two for 30, and I mean, very rarely would I only sell one.
Well,
and it was the same with my lab products, which were 1 for 8 or 2 for 12, and almost always I would sell the 2 for 12. So.
I was gonna say my prints are 10 or 20, and the Ninja Turtles are at a size that they're 10. So if somebody wants a set of 3, it's only $20. If they want a set of all 6, it's $40.
Mm-hmm.
And I have headshots also, same thing. Those the $10 ones, the 3 for 2. The buy 2 get 1 free works really well. The bigger prints that I sell for 20 doesn't happen as much. It happens occasionally, but it's usually more. I'll tell them, and then they'll think about, oh, do I even want 3? Blah, blah, and once in a while it happens, but not usually. But the smaller $10 prints, it very, very often turns one sale into 3 or more.
Right. Now, do you have the same prints at different sizes, or each
No.
Okay. Yeah, because that's the thing I get too, because there are a lot of people selling their prints for $10 or $15, and I sell mine for 20 starting, and but then I have the 8x10s, which I sell for $10. And there's always people. Go ahead, Jack. Yes. Sorry.
But they're different images. They're not the same images. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. Well, but I always get that. Do you have this in the smaller one? Because people just want the artwork, and sometimes it has to do with wall space. I understand that, but
sure.
But a lot of times they just want the artwork. And what I always tell them, and this isn't a lie, but it's also intentional, is that I tell them, no, I can't. Those ones I can't reduce because they're at a different ratio, which is true. Because if I slope them down, it would stretch them out. With they're just, and that makes sense to them. But the real reason is, no, I'm not going to sell those, because if I put them in a smaller size, everyone would just buy the smaller size.
Right.
Now, the exception to that is I have extra large prints that are 20 by 30 that I sell for $30. But but I have a bigger, because anytime you get above 12 by 18, the printing cost goes like way up. Like it's not, it's like from $2, and then it just jumps up to like $10. So I don't care if they buy the 12 by 18 as opposed to 20 by 30, because I actually make a little more off the 12 by 18.
Right. It's funny because what you're saying I've heard before. Like I always mix up if it's Will Terry or Will Terrell, but one of them had talked about the same thing of not having different sizes because then people just want the other size or whatever. And I absolutely understand that, but for whatever reason, it has never been an issue with me. I tell people, they say, how much are your prints? I said, depends on the size. They're 10 or 20. And then I'll point to like the 11 by 17 and be like, see, like ones like this are 20, anything smaller is 10. And that's usually the end of the conversation. Not once in years of doing it has anybody ever said, can I get a small version of that big one?
Oh, really? Yeah, I get that all the time.
Maybe it's because of the type of artwork we do, because if you have like a warning mad scientist at play, kind of more of an infographic logo-y kind of thing, it could be shrunk down and still be read easily and still serve the purpose that they want to put it on whatever thing. Whereas a lot of my big ones are, again, like I'll have like Godzilla fighting a Godzilla monster, and they're like super detailed with a lot of intricate like scales and stuff and water and whatever. And so if you shrunk it down, it wouldn't look as good. So maybe people just instinctively know that they don't want a smaller version of that.
Right. And I talked to Will Terry when I was there, and he, it looked like I don't know if he originally sold like larger prints, but it looked like almost everything on his display was pretty close to the same size, and it was usually like a smaller print, like an 8x10.
But did he have multiple sizes of those, or no?
Not that I could see. It looked like pretty much everything, or maybe that's just the way he was displaying it, because he had more real estate that way, and maybe he did have larger prints if people wanted it. I'm not sure, but I only saw pretty much, for the most part, one size. There was a couple other ones, but for the most part, it seemed like everything was kind of one size.
Now, I think it's fascinating to me, because I think how you approach a convention very much has to do with like your aim for the convention, like what your intention is with exhibiting. Like, are you going there to make money on that day? Are you going there to make like a long impact, like maybe expand your business and improve the potential for like future clients? are you going there to build a brand? Like, you know, if you're going there for all objectives, then the likelihood of all the objectives being as effectively, you know, marked off the list are slimmer, you know?
Agreed.
Right. And there's a few.
I used to mainly just go to sell prints and make money. And over time, I've wanted to, you know, build my brand as an artist and then also sell my comic. And so I am kind of pulling in three different directions, as you're saying. And my experimental solution for this year coming up is to approach each convention with a different goal in mind instead of trying to hit all of them at once.
I kind of like that.
Yeah, knowing
the only thing that I would worry about that is because you learn from your mistakes, and how do you know what works if you try something different at every show?
Well, no, I'm not going to be. No, I mean, I will tweak my setup, tweak my inventory, tweak my pitch. But I'm basically, some shows I'm going to go to push the fact that I have a comic and I'm a creator and check out my comic. And if I don't make as much money, that's okay, as long as I sell more comics and people know who I am. Other shows I'm going to go to just to sell prints and make money because it's a big superhero show. And I know I could make a decent amount of money and not worry about selling my comics or anything like that. So depending on the show, I will aim for a different target. So maybe I'll have 2 or 3 different versions of what I'm doing throughout the year, but not a completely different setup every show.
Yeah.
I like it.
Real quick, because I have it up on the screen here. This is a setup I just got, not for dog pictures, but I think it could fold down. It comes flat, so hopefully I literally just got it a few days ago. I saw somebody had this, and I've been doing a lot of headshots. So while I don't like putting a lot of stuff on my table because I need the room, my idea was I could do this and put headshots representing, again, different Power Rangers and monsters and things, so that if I don't have enough room to display lots of stuff, the headshots alone will at least convey the genres I participate in. But more importantly, I'm going to put them with the bags and the backing boards in a configuration similar to what you're looking here, and have it where people could just pick them up. And if they want it, just take it. Because normally I have to go in back and get it and put it in a bag. But I like the idea. People love rummaging through my pins. So I figured if I could have some prints right there that they could touch and grab, and then I could say, oh, by the way, here's a book you can look through. Here's this other stuff. But I'm hoping that this will be a good way to get people, you know, physically involved with the art.
That's smart.
Yeah, and
that's like a point of sale. Oh, go ahead.
That's what I do with my 8.5 by 11 prints. Is they're on a rack and people just flip through them. And my postcards, which are on a spinner rack. But that display looks like it's similar to the kind that I built, where it's interlocking. So It looks like you could pull it apart and it'll be flat. Hopefully that's the case.
That is the case. It comes flat. I just haven't put it together yet, so I don't know how hard it will be to pull it apart, but we'll find out.
That's rad. I think that's great because it also has like a point of purchase type thing too.
Yes.
Which is smart. So it's like somebody could come and be buying something, but then they see that rack right next to, you know, the register basically. So
well, impulse buy.
But it's a smart thing. I mean, there's a reason those things exist in stores, and to me, it's been mystifying to me. Like it's kind of like a similar realization I had a couple of years into being a freelancer, where I realized like how much I wasn't approaching my business like a business. And the second I started like treating it like a business and like invoicing people and just kind of thinking of it like, well, would a plumber have an issue like writing a contract or an invoice or a quote? No, then I shouldn't, you know? And that kind of like opened a window for me. And it's funny because a similar things happen with conventions where it's just like, I'm surprised at how much I haven't been approaching it like a business, you know, at least myself. And so I'm really excited just hearing about your guys' experience too. It's like giving me juice for when I get this stupid thing done and can end my you know, purgatory of like not being able to go to like, because I've forced myself to not even be able to attend conventions.
Well, that might not be a good idea because you could learn a lot from attending them as well.
Yeah, but I just worry it's like I should be making my book, and then if I'm attending, I need to be boothing. I don't know if that makes sense.
It does, but I would suggest before you booth, you go as an attendee at least once.
Oh, if it's a new show, hell yeah.
Well, no. But I mean, I know you've been to a lot of shows, but the way you're talking, I feel like you haven't been to a show at all in a few years. Is that accurate?
Yeah, I'm forcing myself not to go.
Well,
And
but
that's
what I'm saying,
kind of what the theme is, because we're trying to anticipate, where these shows are going,
Yeah.
and if you in a year or however long it takes to get your book ready where you're going to a show, and that's the first time you've set foot on a show floor in several years, things
Yeah.
could have changed. The dynamics of the crowd could have changed. I really think you're doing yourself a disservice if you don't at least go to one show and just walk the floor a little bit before actually setting up shop. I don't mean tomorrow. I mean, you could wait till your book's done, but I think, yeah, you'd be hurting yourself if you don't.
Well, I mean, that's the thing. The main goal is to finish my book. So there's going to be a nice interim of like, once the book's done, all the production work and stuff like that. So in that interim, I'll be able to hopefully check out some shows. That's not
Okay.
a bad idea.
All
but
right,
in the
then.
meantime, I can't. It's like a self-imposed sanction, and it's literally just a psychological trick to make me motivated to get it done.
Sure.
I have to come up with weird stuff like that all the time. Where do you see the future for conventions, like for comic conventions? Do you guys like, because like something on my mind has been like thinking of other approaches too, like really targeting different venues and stuff than just comic conventions,
Well, as I said, I went to
and
a
it sounds
library
like,
show. Sorry, go ahead.
yeah.
And the one I went to wasn't amazing, but apparently, unbeknownst to me, this has been a thing that's been going on for a few years, and some of them are great. Like the one I went to, there was maybe 200, 300 people over the course of 4 hours, but there's another one in a different town that supposedly had like 9,000 people last year, and they, had what's his name? Ron Lim was there. Like they didn't have the celebrity guests, but they had the celebrity comic book, one or two people, like that kind of back the way Comic Cons used to be, but mixed with like an educational workshop for the kids. And so it's, the kind of stuff you'd expect at a library mixed with a traditional Comic-Con where, yeah, there might be some people in costume, but everybody was there to buy comics and comic art or take a workshop about comics or comic book art. And I think that's a pretty cool thing that it's going in that direction, because I think, the cons as a whole, it definitely feels like a bubble that's going to burst. 5 years ago, there were like 2 shows local to me, and then anything else I had to drive really far, take a plane. And within the last 5, 6, 7 years, not only are there now like 10 shows, more than that, probably I do about 10. There's probably 20 shows within an hour to 2 hours driving distance of my house every year. But more and more, like this, I live in the Bay Area of California, and Fanime was right near me. I didn't go, but I'm aware of it. So Fanime was happening, but there was also a sci-fi book convention in the same town the same weekend. And then like 3 hours away, there was another show. And then like it's crazy. It used to be there'd be 2 or 3 a year within your area. Then it was there's a ton in your area, and now there are several on the same weekend, almost every weekend. That cannot sustain. I don't think Comic Cons are going to go away completely. I think some of the big ones will stay. Some of the ones like Wizard World, I see Wizard World having a lot of trouble because they throw a lot of money out and they're not really run with passion. They're just trying to make money off it, and they're going to have burnout. So I think, San Diego Comic-Con and ones like that will stick around, and I think small mom and pop ones will stick around. I think a lot of the ones in between, a lot of the newer ones that just started aren't going to last. And I think in, 5 to 10 years, we're going to be back to where we were, with the exception that maybe we'll have some nice library cons and smaller, mom and pop shows mixed in.
Yeah.
And to me, that might be a good thing. But
yeah.
I was curious, guys, do you do mostly smaller shows then? Do you do any like big shows?
I do. I do mostly smaller shows just based on quantity, but I do a few big shows every year. Like I've done Silicon Valley Comic Con, which is pretty big. I did San Diego Comic Con the first year was pretty big. I'm doing I don't know how big it's going to be, but I'm doing Power Morphicon this year, which I went previously as a fan. I imagine that's going to be pretty big. I did Stanley's one a year or 2 ago, but the big ones for me are very like hit or miss. Smaller
That's what
shows,
I was going to ask. Like,
yeah.
if you, because obviously the table cost is bigger. There's more people,
Yeah.
but there's also more vendors. So I'm just curious because I've heard. I don't know. Have you ever seen? I think Christopher Keiko, I think is his name. He does a vlog on YouTube where, this guy just did his like 100th show, and he's been doing this for, I think maybe only like 3 years or so, and he's already done 100 shows. But he does like a show almost every weekend. But
Right,
it seems like he does less smaller shows, and it,
I do know people, and not just comic artists, but like artisans that do like steampunk things and stuff like that. I've met them and talked to them, and that's their job. Like they do art, but they don't take a lot of client work. They don't have a day job. They don't, they are convention artists, and they do, yeah, like you said, like a show every single weekend, sometimes two, and they'll fly all over. And it's like flying is such a huge expense. There are some shows I do where I only make a couple $100. So if I flew somewhere, I'm not making any money. And I don't know what they're doing, because at the risk of sounding immodest, a lot of them aren't better artists than me. They're different, and maybe they're business-wise doing something, but it's not like the quality is like, wow, they're such a great artist. I could see why. Like they're fine. They're a professional level artist, but I consider myself the same. And I don't know how they make it work. And when I talk to them, it's not like they're being guarded or secretive. They're just like, oh, a lot of people just come and buy and blah, blah, and they just it seems like easy to them in a way that I don't understand, Right. But going back to your original question, I do like 75% of my shows are smaller shows, and typically I don't lose money. Some shows do better than others. Some shows I make a decent amount of money. Some I only made a little bit over table. But, in the last couple of years, I've gotten to the point where I pretty much never lose money. And so if it's a small local show, I could always afford to risk it, because I'm not going to be out anything other than my day, and, I don't lose any money. Right. The bigger shows seem to be very high or low. I've gone and made thousands of dollars, and I've gone and lost hundreds of dollars. There's not a lot of in between in my limited experience with the bigger shows. And maybe it's because of the type of work I do. It's more specialized. So if the fans are there of the type of stuff I do well. And if they're not, I don't. Because and I've said this before, probably, if I ever become very successful, I will believe I will be a cult hit. I will never be the next, Jim Lee or whatever. I will be, some smaller person, because 100 people will go by my table and not give it a second glance. And then that 101st person will go, oh my God, I love this. This is great. And spend $50. And that's been my experience very often. Somebody won't even pick up my comic. Hey, do you want to look at my comic? They won't even touch it. They'll walk away. Someone else will pick it up and buy all the comics I have there, one of each, so whatever it is about what I do is, I guess, appeals to a specific type of person. And if I go to a big show and put all that money out and that person isn't there, I'm in trouble.
Yeah. So, hey, Josh, something we haven't touched on that I know you were curious about was the fact that I was brought in as a guest.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. That is probably one of the biggest questions I had.
Yeah.
Do you think that had an impact, like a positive impact on your sales? That's my biggest question.
My sales, I don't think so, because of this simple fact that, so I did an exclusive print. I actually did 2 exclusive prints, and they were even featured. They were featured in the program, because if you're a guest and you do an exclusive print, they'll feature it like in the program. I mean, it's like the second page in. You flip a page, and it's right there. It was right there, front and center. And I hardly sold any of those. Uh-huh. So I don't think that helped. Now, obviously, because, so the way it worked was, I had already purchased a table. They were going to refund my money. And I said, well, I kind of want to get 2 tables. So can you just keep my money for the 1 table, and then you just give me another one? And so that's what happened. And they also gave me an end cap, which is awesome. Nice. So now when I say that I did the best at any show, that's regardless of whether I would have paid full price for the tables or whatever. So that's not really a factor. Now, the other thing I will say was that I invested a lot in my new booth setup and new products and things like that. So that, I still made, a pretty decent profit, but I did make a substantial investment in a bunch of new, things and especially time more than even money. The amount of time. If I think of all the set, I pretty much stopped working on my comic for a month beforehand, and pretty much everything else aside from my day job. So you gotta consider that as part of it. But now that that's all done and it's working, next year, that's just an investment into the future. So there's that. But there definitely, it was awesome. It'd be real nice if they invited me again. I don't know if that'll happen or not, but yeah, it was super cool, and obviously that helped with the price. Now, if the only thing is, as anyone that does conventions know, at the end of the convention, if you're going to do it again, you've got to re-up right there. So anything extra you kind of got, because last year, I mean, that money was like gone and forgotten, even though I only bought one table, which kind of saved me a little bit at the time, but I didn't do that good. So even though I did better at this time, you know, I haven't done it yet, but I'm going to have to re-up like soon and drop some money back into next year. So that's kind of always the case. Until the day you quit doing a particular convention, you don't really see your money, you know, because you're just putting it in. I mean, hopefully you get enough where you're making more than what you're putting down for the next year, which is the case. But it's still a good chunk of change that of your profits that you're just dumping into next year.
With the hope being, though, that you also get fans that will buy things online or commission you, or you know, money after the fact. I have a question about being the invited guest. You've done that show several times now, and so they know who you were from that. Do you know how or why they chose to make you an invited guest? And follow-up question, what are the chances that they're just going to invite you again next year now that they've done it once? Okay. So first part of that question, I have no unearthly idea, or I honestly have no idea, because the thing is, I have friends that were guested previous years. Mm-hmm. So the first thing when they contact me, I contacted these guys and I'm like, hey, did you guys put in a good word for me? And they're like, no, actually we didn't get guested this year. So I did talk to the people that invited me, and they just said, no, we just kind of watch what you're doing, and we like it, and we want to offer some tables to some local talent. So that was why. But I had no idea I was on anyone's radar at all. Right. And there's a lot of people at these shows, and a lot of people are local. So, I mean, it was kind of sort of an ego boost there. So that was cool. Sure, yeah. The second part of the question, what was it? What was the question again? Well, because you were talking about having to buy a table next year, and I was saying now that you've been invited guest. I don't. They told me when I got it that there's no guarantee that I will next year. Okay. So I don't want to count on it. But I did talk to somebody that's been guested 5 years in a row. So maybe that I'm guested this year, it's a possibility. I'm really anxious when I go to re-up what's going to happen, because I did go to re-up at the end of this convention, but they were only taking cash and check, I guess, and I was just going to put it on my card because I wanted to find out where my finances were before I did that. Sure. So I talked to the person that runs that, and she said, oh, you can do it online. And I said, well, what's the chance that I can get a corner booth? Because I know those sell out real quick and I don't want to wait. And she was kind of like, oh, are you Circworks? And I said, yeah. And I said, oh, I just like, oh, you're Kelly, who kind of runs that part of the show. And I said, I was just kind of like, yeah, I didn't recognize you because I only know your voice over the intercom and your avatar. But anyway, so she said, no, just contact me. We'll make sure you got your corner and everything. That's cool. And because she knows you have a deluxe setup that you really need it. Yeah. And so I'm going to be totally honest, and I'll put it in a good word, because like I said, I had a great show. So I'll just say, I know a lot of people had a down year and a lot of people are upset, but I just want you to know I had a great show. I'll see what she says. Maybe they'll invite me back. It'd be great if they do. That will help even more, because, that means I get to put a little more in my pocket that I earned, that I'm not going to have to give turn back to the convention. So, but there were definitely, I mean, like I said, I don't know that being a guest helped as far as sales and things like that.
The question I would ask is, like, did you have people coming to your booth, like, who seemed more familiar? Yeah, they were more familiar, like, with you. And then even that, how do you gauge that, right? Because if that happened, it could be from your YouTube videos,
Well, and that I was going to speak to. So I don't know that the being a guest, because as far as I'll have to look through I don't even think I looked through the whole like program.
Guests are definitely solicited a little bit higher in all shows. They definitely.
I know on the website they did the graphic with me and everything, and I don't think they pushed that out. And now that I think of it, I should have grabbed that graphic and pushed it out myself, but I didn't post it. So I posted some stuff, but I was so behind trying to get stuff done that I had to rush like the morning of just to try to get my social media stuff to get ready so it could go out. But so I don't know. And again, based on the fact that my exclusive prints didn't really sell that great. Now, I will say that I made my money back as far as printing costs because I have a pretty big markup on those, and the ones that I did sell, I more than made my money back. So I didn't lose money other than the time that I spent to create it. And I mentioned this on my channel and everything, but what I'll do is I'll just make a variant of that print that isn't branded Phoenix and change the colors and take the branding off, and then I'll sell it, hopefully sell it on my website. So that time hopefully won't have been so much of a waste, but everything else kind of made up for it.
You know, I wonder if and I've never done an exclusive print. I've thought about it, but I always worry that I'm gonna put all that work in and not sell any. And then yeah. But I wonder if instead of have an exclusive print, but instead of branding it Phoenix and putting their colors stuff, just make it whatever you want.
Right. And that's what most people do. That's what most people do. But I thought, well, here's an opportunity to create a great souvenir that people will, oh, this is the Phoenix. I'm coming to Phoenix Comic Con, and they sell T-shirts and stuff. So I figured, why not brand it Phoenix Comic Con? I took the whole thing was based on their slogan, "Discover Your Inner Geek." So I created these two geeks, a guy and a girl, and I had little annotations on all the different things, pointing to all the different things they were carrying or dressed like, that said what they were and everything. I was really happy with it. And I did the ones I did sell, people were really into it. So, and I said, you know, this makes a great souvenir and everything. I just didn't sell a whole lot of them, and they were signed and numbered, limited edition. So all that stuff. And I figured the limited edition would also help, but
right. Last year you did one too, right? It was like a pimp bot, or not a pimp bot.
No, that wasn't an exclusive. That's one thing I'm finding out, that my mechs sell pretty well. So all the mech ones that I've done have sold well. But the one I did was a Phoenix mech, and it was kind of my take on like a Voltron or Battle Planet.
Right, that's what I was thinking. But that was not an exclusive.
That one was. It was Phoenix. It was called Phoenix Force 5, and it was kind of that taking all those tropes of the.
And that was an exclusive last year. How did that sell compared to the nerd one?
That one sold well, especially that was actually 2 years ago. Okay. And I'm going to bring, and they're not exclusive to that particular show. So I'm going to bring all that stuff back again, and I can continue to sell it. So maybe they'll sell next year. It's just weird what sells from one year to the next. But that one sold really well, and that could be the artwork. I mean, the art wasn't blow you away artwork as far as the ones I did this time, but it was fun, and it was kind of, and I thought it would tap into just geek fandom. I mean, just
but
geek.
It might not have been as, and this is no criticism of the art, but it might not have been as broadly eye-catching from across the room, because you kind of have to read it to get the jokes and really appreciate it. Whereas a big, colorful robot you could see from 30 feet away.
Yeah, I did put it front and center. Like it was the centerpiece. Like I have my plutonium case, which everyone looks at and everyone's like, "Oh, how much is the plutonium case?" Because it looks like the one from Back to the Future. But I put them right atop that, so it was like front and center. That was the centerpiece. So. Right. I mean, you could see it. It was the first thing you
really quick. Sorry, we're getting a couple questions in the chats, and Corey asked this really good question, which is he just said, "I've never tabled. What type of show should I start out doing?" And then Mike Emirates seconded it.
Okay.
So, and then he was asking what the bare
does
minimum.
A lot more shows than me, so I'll have him answer that.
Well, I would say try a library show, because my real answer is any show that's free, because chances are you're not going to make any money the first show you do. You might get lucky, but you should plan on losing money, not making any money. So you don't want to invest a lot. A library show, a local, if you have a comic shop, sometimes they have little special events on their anniversary or something. And these are smaller than full conventions, which is good, because there's, less monetary involvement. Maybe you get it for free, maybe you get it for $20, whatever. And the people you meet are going to be, there's less competition. They're not going to be expecting to meet, Todd McFarlane or something. They'll be happy to see any artist, and a lot of people are more in the mood to talk, and it kind of will just get you used to that environment without being the overwhelming rush of a million people running by you and setting up and stuff. If you can't do one of those two, then any local, I call them mom and pop shows, but basically a show you've never heard of, not Wizard World, not Comic-Con. It'll be called Kentucky Blastaway, and it'll be at the table tables will be $50 for all 2 or 3 days. And those are the kind I recommend too, for the same reasons. Less people, so it's less crowded, but that means you're going to get more engagement. Even if you don't get sales, you get the experience of talking to people and working on those skills, figuring out your display, and not risking a lot of money while you're doing it.
Yeah, I would 100% agree with that. I'd also say, just add to it, like a zine fest is always good.
Is that good if you have comics?
Yeah, I mean, I think it is. It depends on, you'd have to have some floppies or something, but I mean, that's a good warm up, especially a small zine show. They tend to be pretty inclusive, and it'll kind of get you used to, like, dealing with annoying tablers too, because they tend to be at every convention. So there's convention etiquette, which is great because, like, once again, maybe you accidentally end up being the bullhorn guy and you notice, and you'll learn from that. Like so I totally agree. A low risk, smaller convention or a small press convention. Another good starting point.
With the Zine Fest, you made me think of a lot of towns, at least by me, and I know back in New Jersey too, have like art walks and First Fridays and like art festivals in the downtown, which aren't comic book or even book specific. There might be painting, there might be music, there might be whatever. It's more of a festival, but those tables are usually not very expensive. And again, it's sort of a low bar of entry as far as competitiveness and what people expect of you. So if you don't have any of the other options, you could always just try going to one of those sometime.
Yeah.
I wanted to kind of backtrack a little bit because you had asked a question that I didn't answer. You were talking about if guesting, brought in more people or whatever, or the YouTube thing. And actually, that was one thing that I was surprised that a lot of people did recognize me from YouTube. So especially like I was walking around, I did a thing where I just basically walked the whole hall, and then I put that in my video and everything. And I had people stop me like, oh, and some people didn't say they knew me from YouTube, but they clearly knew me, and I don't know where else they would know me from. Some people said, oh, they watched me on YouTube. A lot of people came to my table, and it's not that I have like this huge, massive audience or anything, but I've got tons of videos. And some of those videos have a lot of views. So even if they saw one video, they might remember me just because of the green lab coat or whatever. So that, I think that helped. And some people may have searched me out. I don't know. But I did get a lot of people saying they've seen me on YouTube.
You definitely have a distinctive look with the coat and everything that'll help people remember you, even if they just saw you once or saw a thumbnail. Right. But and you have a lot of followers, at least compared to me. But one other thing I'll say is I think I have like 1/10 of your followers, almost literally. But I occasionally get recognized from YouTube too, which used to blow my mind until I realized I mostly get recognized at my local shows. And I do a lot of videos about my local shows. So if somebody goes to the San Jose Toy Show and then looks up San Jose Toy Show, they're going to see my video about the San Jose Toy Show. So the next time I go to the San Jose Toy Show, they're definitely going to know me because they've seen it. So and not to downplay the fact that you've had reach, because like I said, you have more reach than me and you have this iconic look. But oftentimes I get recognized at shows because I've done videos of those shows before. And then people will search me out for that reason, which is another weird thing. Like, not because they liked my art, but like, oh, I saw your video. And they might buy art, they might not. But just the fact that I did a video about the show last year, they want to come say hi to me.
Yeah. And the other thing that I just wanted to touch on about being a guest was the green room, which is pretty awesome. So the only thing is, when I first heard about this, I'm like, oh, this is sweet. And they had every day around lunchtime I think it was set up for a couple hours. They had this spread where you can go and get whatever you want. And I'm like, oh man, this is cool, but I don't know how I'm going to leave my table to get it. So I'm like, oh man. But what I realized was it was like a straight shot from my table to the front. I mean, so literally it probably took me, I could have probably done it 5 to 7 minutes. So I just asked my neighbor, can you watch my booth for a second? I put up a sign, ran and got it, and they would let me bring it back, which was cool. So so that was pretty cool. Yeah. That was a nice little fringe benefit. So
that's awesome. So is it like free food and stuff?
Yeah, it was a whole buffet. It was like
that's rad.
Like one time it was like Mexican, and then it was like good. It was like one day it was like what was it? I don't know, like pork tenderloins or like chicken, or you could do vegetarian too, whatever you're into. But just whatever. I mean, it was each day it was a different thing, and there was a bunch to choose from. So, and then in the mornings they always had like Starbucks coffee and that kind of thing, or tea, if you love tea. So,
That is
that was pretty cool. Yeah.
So Mike actually wanted to know what the bare minimum you should have to table at a show.
I wasn't 100% what he meant by that, to be honest.
I think they mean like minimum of product. Like what's the bare minimum you should bring to convention? You know,
as far as the number of prints and comics, and I mean, you definitely want to look like you have product. I mean, so I would. How many prints would you say is minimum,
10.
Gaz?
10.
Yeah, I would say 10, 15 prints.
Yeah. Because you have to have enough to fill up the wall behind you and all your display area.
Right. And then, comics, a few comics at your table, maybe buttons.
If you have prints and or buttons and other things, you could get away with having one comic, one floppy, if you have other stuff. But if you only have one floppy comic and that's all you have on your table, that looks pretty weak. You want to have at least 2 or 3 floppies, I think, if that's all you're pushing.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think having, even like postcards and postcard packs, like you want a range of price points. So you want something that's going to be accessible to people who literally have like $1 to throw away.
I sell my pins for $1 each. I did it as an experiment once, had 3. They sold pretty well. And I realized that, I sell them for $1 and I only make like 70 cents on them or whatever. Yeah. But if at the end of the show, I've sold like 30 of them, I made like 20 something bucks, and people are happy, like you said, because they only had $1 and they wanted to buy something. Yeah. And sometimes you get a lot of people that'll come and just want to talk to you, show you their art, talk about whatever, and that's fine. And sometimes like, I'll buy something, but they don't want to spend $20. So very often somebody will come and chat with me for a while and then buy a button or a sticker as they leave. And that adds up, and it also adds to goodwill.
Yeah, and it's just providing customers with a variety of price points. Have something at a high price point that might be something that you wouldn't even spend. Like when I used to convention, I'd have skateboard decks that were about $80 to $100, and almost every convention, one guy would come by and buy a deck. And it's like just one skateboard deck selling would make a mass hit on the investment in the table. So it's good to have something on a higher end, because there's those people who want to spend money.
Original art is good for that
too. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
go
ahead. I was going to say, so when I did the gallery show, I wanted a nice focal point or whatever. So I had my Sriracha mech. I don't know if you guys saw that, but it's this giant rooster mech, and it's this by Sriracha. Got these giant tanks of Sriracha power in them, everything. But so I had that printed on canvas, like a big canvas, and I didn't sell it at the gallery show. So I figured, well, I'll just bring it. I'll just set it there, just to add something extra to the booth that kind of looked good. And I sold it at the convention, and that was a pretty hefty price tag. I mean, it was like $150 or something like that. Yep. So, But then I'm thinking, well, should I do more of those, or was it just kind of a fluke that it did sell? Should I make that investment in getting more of those things, or?
I think you should have a limited quantity of that high end price point, but always have one at least. Yeah. Because the thing is, there are those people who they sincerely go there with maybe they're on especially the last day of the convention, they're budgeted out a certain amount. They're like, dude, I got $80 to spend, or I got $100 to spend. Get those guys, if they like your work and they want to support it, there's some people who that's a drop in the bucket for them, to spend. And then you want your mid price ranges too, right?
Well, that's like the regular prints usually. Mm-hmm. Yeah. But with the original art, I very rarely create original art to sell. What I usually do is have original art that became a print or a button, or it was used in the production of a manufactured good of mine. Yeah. And then I'll just have the original art. So I'm never doing extra work. It's just a matter of having that original art there as an option.
That's what I do too. Yeah. So I got all the stuff that I did for March of Robots, my blueprint sketches. Yeah. I've got a spinner rack with those, but a lot of those I've turned into postcards or whatever. Right. So, and sometimes I'll point that out and I'll say, oh yeah, so this one is actually a postcard, and sometimes that'll make it sell too. But yeah, I mean, people flip those and they're original artwork, so I charge a premium for those. But right. I mean, it's not crazy It's not like if I don't really do commissions, but it's definitely less than I would charge for a commission because they're not getting something custom.
I was just
still, yeah.
Yeah, sorry. I was just gonna say I have some original art, but I don't even always put it out unless people ask because I feel weird about having it on the table sometimes. My big item more than the original art is commissions. I always take commissions. Now I have smaller price points for just like a headshot or something, but if you want like a full body inked from me with like grayscale, that's gonna run you $80.
Right.
And I don't sell those a lot, but every now and then I do. And that's those big ticket item people that want a piece of original art or want to support me a little more, whatever. And so even if I don't have a piece of original art or some other big thing, I'm always ready to draw. And that, and even the smaller ones add up, but the big one,
that's why I don't do commissions, because I would want to charge more than that, because the problem is, and this is why I don't do commissions, is I'm not a name like a comic book, people don't know me for my comics or whatever.
Me either. I mean,
right. But when I do freelance work, I demand a certain amount. So I don't want to charge less than that.
Well, hold on.
So I just do it,
Let me clarify, because maybe you'll still feel the same way. When I say commissions, I don't mean something I'm going to take home and work on later. I mean something I'm going to do at my table at the show. So I'll do it to the best of my ability, but it's never going to be as good as if you commission me to do something at home, and that would cost more usually.
Okay, yeah, but still, I mean, my price would be as much as maybe some, not all of them. I mean, some of them are like charge a lot, but the average comic book, professional guy sometimes would charge, probably what I would want to charge, just because, for one, I just don't want to do that stuff, especially on the spot.
That's the bigger issue, I think.
But see, that's the thing, because I had a lot of people coming asking me if I did commissions, and then also, hitting me up for freelance work. Right. And I was like, and I always they ask if I do commissions or if I do, if I do freelance, and inevitably I always say no. And then sometimes they press me. And so one person kind of pressed me, and he says, well, what about this kind of product? And then I'm like, and I don't want to give it away yet because it may happen. And there's certain things that are kind of bucket list things. Mm-hmm. And so this person told me what it was. And I'm saying, oh, okay, that's interesting. I haven't done one of those. That might be something interesting. I can tell you guys after the show, but
sure.
So I'm like, and then he told me what the company was he worked for, and I'm like, okay, you're legit. Yeah, let's just give me a call. Now, this guy may never give me a call. If he doesn't, that's fine, because I'm trying not to do freelance stuff. But if this guy comes to me, then yeah, I'm going to jump on it, because first of all, I'm sure it will pay decent. Second of all, what they liked was my mechs.
Right.
They specifically pointed out the mech daddy that I did.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm like, oh yeah, that type of thing on this type of product, yeah, definitely give me a call. So if he calls me, that'd be great.
I find that there's a little bit of self-selection even for the commissions I do at the show, where for a pencil head sketch I charge $10, and I could do that pretty quick. Yeah. And those I'll get Deadpool and Supergirl and Darth, whoever. It's just like whoever they like, they'll spend that $10, maybe even $20 to have me ink it. The people that pay 60, 80, 100 to get a more deluxe one, inevitably it's a Godzilla monster, it's a Power Ranger, it's a ninja, something I specialize, something I like doing, something. So it's not, if it was you, if I was coming to you, it'd be the equivalent of like, do me, some kids fighting zombies, do me some mad scientist robot, it would be something. And not that I would turn down an $80 Deadpool thing, but like, again, the crowd is self-selecting. As soon as it goes above $20, they're getting something they could see on my wall that I do well already. They're not asking for.
That makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm equally hesitant to do just sketches at conventions, but to me, it's like, it's the equivalent of like, if you do like plumbing all day and then you're like, say like, I don't know, selling plumbing equipment or something, and somebody comes up to you and is like, hey, can you fix my toilet at like 1/10 of the price you'd make when you're working professionally? Even though right now you're kind of off work. Like I don't, like, for me, that's the issue is like, I enjoy drawing, But to me, like doing sketches of characters I didn't create and stuff like that, it just feels like work. And I'm like, if I'm gonna do work, I'll do like one of these drawings when I'm at home and make what I make doing 10 here, you know?
I understand that, but I don't. Well, I won't say that's the wrong way to look at it because it's subjective.
Yeah,
but
it might be though.
I look at it differently. Well, I don't mind drawing, whatever character, because even if it's not a character I enjoy, there's a certain level of challenge to it, and it stretches me as an artist to like, oh man, I've never drawn Poison Ivy. I guess I better figure out how to do that right now. And it is a little bit stressful, but I like that. I think it's good for me as an artist to be in that position. But that aside, and I understand some people hate that, and I don't like in the moment, I don't like it. I just think it's good for me, but more than that, using your plumber analogy, the way I would feel, I'm the plumber selling my plumber wares, and somebody comes up to me and says, hey, you're sitting here anyway. You can't go home. You can't do anything else but sit here. Here's a really easy plumbing job that you could do while still selling your stuff to basically get free money. And what people will see you doing this and maybe want to hire you to do something else later.
Yeah,
that's how I look at it, because it's not free time. I am working. You know what I mean? Right. And again, the money thing, if I was doing it at home, I would charge more. But I'm just sitting there doing nothing or selling something. But even if you're selling, there's a lot of downtime. And what you get is the best quality you could get in, an hour while I'm sitting at a table, as opposed to when I'm at home.
We've talked about this before, you and I, guess, but because one of the other reasons I don't like to do commission, because I want to focus on selling my products. And if I've got my head down, and I know you've said that you're cognizant of that and you pay attention if somebody's actually looking, but I've never been, at least at Phoenix Con, there are times where I'm not doing a lot, but those are very few and far between. And if they are, I'm doing something like, sometimes I'll bag prints while I'm doing it, or I'll look busy.
Right.
You don't want to look like I'm not doing anything. Because
I agree, but I feel that drawing makes you look busy, especially if you're working on.
No, I agree with that, but I still think, to me, it's hard for me to draw something sporadically. Like, I can work on it like a minute here, and then I gotta do something else, and then I gotta go back and work on that 2 minutes.
If you can't do it, or if you don't want to do it, then it's a non-issue. You know what I mean? If it's something that's a hardship. But, and again, I've talked about this before too. Like, I used to work at Six Flags doing caricatures. I still do it on the side sometimes. And maybe that has a lot to do with it, because I'm just used to drawing on demand very quickly at not my full ability for a lot of money. You know what I mean? So, and this would be less money, but it's, And when I worked at theme parks, you're supposed to always be trying to get people to come. And after a few months, I realized telling people to come and sit down did nothing. But if I sat down and drew an interesting picture, people would come. And I find that's true at shows too. Sometimes even if I don't have a commission, if it's slow, I'll keep an eye out. But if I just start drawing a cool monster or something, people might come and look, and then maybe they buy a print, or maybe then they want to commission me to do one, which, it always leads to, I've never been drawing and lost a sale. It's only getting sales,
Yeah, I guess for me, it's just one of those things of like everything you're describing, like, drawing on a tight deadline, like to the best of your ability within a tight deadline.
Right.
Like all of that sounds like what I do like 8 hours a day.
Sure.
But like, it's like the part that I don't like is the hourly rate that I'd be making at that point. Like, I know that's weird, but it's just like, to me, that's a hurdle I have trouble getting over, because I'm like, even doing storyboard work where you're working really fast and loose, you're still getting a pretty good day rate.
I understand, and I guess I compartmentalize, because I'm not a fan of undercharging for things either. But I guess I know they're not getting my full quality. Again, not that I'm cheaping out on them, I'm doing my best, but in that situation, and I keep coming back to, I don't see it as free time at all. I'm at work. So I'm already making money selling things. This is extra money. It's not, if I was only there to draw, then I would charge more. But I see this extra revenue stream.
Yeah, and I think we've had this conversation before, because I think looking at it at that light, like, that does make a lot of sense. And the other thing is, like, like maybe you just put the rate you want to make and see how that goes.
I will absolutely change my prices too. I have my base level, and I'll tell people sometimes I don't want to do that, like, not in a nasty way, but often I get, well, not often, sometimes I get people to ask me to draw things that aren't this is the example I always use, but like hot bad girls, like a Lady Death. Mm-hmm. That is not something I'm good at. If I get a commission to do that at home and I charge a certain amount, I'm going to get a lot of reference and look at Playboy and make it look good. I can do it. but off the top of my head real quick in a half hour to an hour, it's not going to look like what they want it to look like. And I will tell them that. I'll say, that's not really my specialty. I don't think you want me to do that. I said, maybe if you want to commission me at home, if you want something evil, hey, how about you want Ash from Evil Dead? I could do him. Or, like I try to substitute, you like horror movies? How about I do Freddy? But if they really persist and say, no, that's fine, I understand it's not your specialty, then I will sometimes up the price, because like I don't really want to draw Lady Death. Right. I think it's gonna be hard, and she's not a favorite character of mine. So maybe instead of whatever $40 it was gonna be, I'll be like, all right, I'll do it, but it's gonna be $80. And I'll do the opposite too, where if somebody's like, hey, can you do an Ultraman character or a Power Rangers character, but this really obscure one that just happens to be one of my favorites that no one ever asks me to draw, I might say, you know what, I'll do it, and I'll throw in the inks for free, because why not? So I kind of balance it out that way.
Do you find when people approach you, Gaz, with or anyone, or either Josh, but with something that you don't really want to do, and you say, nah, I don't really do that. I realized at this convention this happened a number of times. People came to me and wanted me to do something like that. I just don't really do commissions anymore. And then they kind of persist. And in some cases, like the one I told you about, it's like, okay, yeah, we'll see. But I always say no, and then sometimes they keep pressing. Like there's a guy that wanted me to do something for a game, like a role-playing game, and then he told me the name of the game, and it sounded familiar. And I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, I've heard of that. Well, maybe that might. And it sounded like it was a big thing. But then in my mind, I'm thinking of these people that work for Magic, and they don't pay a whole lot considering the amount of work involved. So I'm like, maybe not. And then I looked up the thing, and what it was, the role-playing game was a open source game. So that's why I noticed the name of the game, but it was just their compatible version. I'm like, I don't know if these guys have the budget for me. So, but I tell them in the beginning, I'm like, I just don't do that. But they keep asking. So, but I imagine if they keep asking, they must have the budget. But in my years of freelance, that might not be the case. I don't know why you would press somebody to do something if they say they don't really want to.
But you haven't talked,
thinking you have something more to offer them.
Have you talked numbers at all with them though?
No.
So I mean, they might not have the budget, but if I were you, why not just come up with some crazy number?
What have I got to lose, because I don't want to do it in the first place?
Right. So. Yeah. So you say a number double or triple what you normally would, and if they say no, who cares? If they say yes, awesome.
Exactly. That's the nice thing about having the full-time job, is that I can. When all I did was freelance, and a lot of times I have to take that stuff. Right. So.
In the chat, Corey is saying that drawing in front of people freaks him out, and fair enough. And a lot of people feel that way. I'm not saying you have to do that. Plenty of people do shows and don't draw and make more money than me. I'm just saying, if you have that ability, it's an extra revenue stream. That's all I'm saying.
And I'd rather be drawing. Had some questions for you, Josh. I don't know if you want me to read them. If you can read it.
I was just going to touch one more thing on that. I do draw at conventions. I bring a sketchbook, because during downtimes it's great. It's like a perfect exercise to like draw these people as they're walking around. It's like you can work on your gesture drawings pretty quick. But I'm kind of where Scott is, in the sense of I spend most of my time more trying to engage with people. Right. And I catch myself if I get too into a drawing, I'll lose sales because I'm not properly engaging.
Absolutely. And that's a different issue. I was just addressing that Corey doesn't want to draw at all, and I'm saying that's too. Yeah. I'd
say if drawing in front of people freaks you out, draw in front of people more, and you'll get used to it and get comfortable with it. Okay, so have I figured out any interesting extras to have at my table? Yeah, I mean, so this is my vision for it, and we'll see, because there's vision and there's reality, right? But
there's Scarlet Witch.
Yeah, this is true. No, I like it. That was beautiful. But like, so for me, I envision that I'm gonna probably have like 3 to 4 prints that are related to my comic. I'm gonna have my comic, which is gonna be a graphic novel, so it'll be a thicker comic that'll probably be somewhere around like a $20 price point. And then I'm going to have probably postcard packs that are all related to the comic, but it'll probably be like 5 or 6 different prints that aren't the same as the posters.
Can you explain postcard packs to me? I'm not really familiar with that.
Okay, so this is just a little thing that, it's like it's a weird little price incentive I found out a long time ago, but it's basically like you can have postcards and usually, have them for like $1 or something, and then of course they're
they're
different
literally postcards where people would send them to their friends, or
just postcards just for sale. It's like a mini print,
Okay, gotcha.
And they sell pretty well at conventions, but you're not going to make a lot on postcards. The nice thing about having postcards is the cost of entry is really low.
Mhm.
But then what I usually do is have like a little like a little slip bag, that's a postcard size like poly bag, and I'll have like 5 or 6 different prints on postcards, and then it'll be like that'll be my dollar item. And then basically, if you spend $2 or no, I think it's usually like $3 or $4, then you get all 6 for like. So it's it's an incentive to buy the pack, and 90% of the time, people would look at the postcard because they're like, a lot of people who go to conventions, even browsing, are like, well, I like this, and it's only $1,
Right.
And they would end up walking away paying for the pack because it was just like, well, I like this and I can't decide, so I'll just get them all.
Right.
So I'll probably try to do something similar to that. I do want to do some lapel pins since I work for a pin company. I've really grown passionate and interested in lapel pins because it's kind of what the company I work for specializes in, is like lapel pins and enamel, keychains and stuff like that. So
probably get a discount too then, right?
Yeah, well, it's weird because it may not work out well for me to use my own company because we work with big, our minimums just don't match. Like,
Gotcha.
So, like if I were ordering, 10,000, then it might work out. But if I'm ordering low quantity, there's other places that probably specialize in that kind of thing more.
Gotcha.
But I love them. And so I want to see it happen,
I have a question. Oh, sorry. Were you done with your?
That's pretty much. That's pretty much what I have on the dock so far. I don't think I'm going to have much more than that, honestly.
No, that's plenty. But I have a question. Once you are tabling with your book and your enamel pins and everything you just said, will you take commissions for your own characters and your own work? Like from somebody likes your book, hey, can I commission you to draw one of your characters or something like that?
Oh, probably, yeah. If it's my own property, I think that's a little different.
And you would still price it lower than you would like a normal commission if you were at the show, or would you hike up the price to? Because you were saying pricing was like kind of a sticking point with other people's work or creations, I should say.
With my own stuff, that's a whole different thing. So I'd have to rethink that, because if it's my own thing. The other thing is I do drawings for people at conventions a lot for free that are like, I'll draw on their books and stuff like that. So,
right.
But, I guess if it's just drawing what I want to draw, then of course I'll charge a little less for that because it's what I want to draw.
Well, I guess I was saying the middle ground of not anything you want, but hey, I haven't read your book because it's not out yet, but let's say there's a character named Jim, and I'm like, I love Jim. Can you do me a drawing of Jim? So it's your character, but they're requesting a specific,
Yeah, I think that would be a possibility, and I definitely will be selling probably original pages, although it's going to be a little heartbreaking for me to sell them. I know that's weird, but it's just like there's something that happened the second I started hand lettering pages, where it's like the collector in me kind of comes out, and it's like when I'm looking at like at this point, like 72 like huge full page comic book pages that I can read in order. I'm like, it's just going to be a shame to sell one because then I don't have the whole thing.
Well, that's when you got to figure out what would be a fair price and then triple it. And then if you sell it for that crazy price, then you won't feel so bad about it.
Yeah, it's just with pricing original comic pages, it's like you got to be competitive with the guys that are.
No, only if you really want to sell it. I'm saying if you're not sure of how you feel about selling it, you don't worry about what it's actually going to be a fair price. You charge a crazy high price.
That's a fair point.
And if you don't sell it, you didn't really want to anyway. But if you do, you feel better about it.
Yeah. I like what Comics Legend said is don't just sell one, sell them all. Yeah, wow. So I could just be like, yeah, but that cost would be
You'd need like a millionaire to, yeah. That's something you do when you've had 20 books and you have a super fan.
Yeah, yeah. But I do think selling originals is a smart idea, and that's actually a big part behind the thinking of doing original pages where it's hand lettered and hand
Are
inked and
you?
stuff.
I forget. I know you've said this. Are you planning on doing a Kickstarter for your big book?
I am, and I'm going to be hitting you guys up like mad when it comes to having to set that up, because my thought on it is, yeah, I mean, why not?
Sure. Well, what I was going to say though is having original comic art pages as a reward for a Kickstarter is a great incentive. So if you decided you were going to sell them, I would say do it then and put them all up, and you won't sell all of them, but maybe you sell 5, 6, 7, and then it's not, you're just missing one. If you could find a price, you're happy letting them go, but that a lot of people do at that time, and it works out well for them.
Yeah, it's not a bad thought. It's one of those things of I don't know why I've always kind of been like that with originals, which is weird.
I used to be like that
too.
I used to be like that before the digital age, but now that I could take a high res scan, and if I ever wanted to print it out, it'd be almost identical. Like I kind of got over it. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I understand it. I'm surprised I haven't, because I've mentioned this before, but it's like I have like 15 years worth of illustrations that like most of them were hand inked and on bristleboard, just piled in a flat file in my garage.
Yeah.
And it's like I don't do anything with them. So
And
it's
the
not
worst
a bad
part
idea.
is there's probably a point where the work out there, at some point you don't care about anymore. You're a better artist, you've moved on, and you'd be happy to sell it. But now it's like not that valuable, or you don't think it's any good. Like you almost have to get to the point where you think it's garbage before you're ready to let it go. And then why would anybody buy garbage?
Exactly. That's a fair point. Yeah.
Yeah. I have that with my blueprint sketches. Like every time I sell one, first I'm like, part of me it's like, oh, this is cool. Somebody's actually cares enough about this that they want to own it. And then the second part is like, oh, that's part of I did this whole collection, and that I don't have that one anymore.
I guess I know, like most artists, and I'm assuming you guys too, stuff that I did a year or two ago, I don't like at all anymore. So it's like, yeah, I might miss it this year, but in 2 years I would hate it. So why not, get a few bucks for it? Like,
yeah. And again, like Josh is saying, I'm not doing anything with these. I already scanned them all in, so eventually I want to do an art book with them. But
there you go.
So but anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm excited about. I'm really pumped about conventions, and what I like about it right now is being at this stage of like really like stewing over it, like in my head, similar to like a Kickstarter. Like I don't feel like I should start a Kickstarter until I'm completely done with the book, and that's just my own ethic and stuff on it.
I agree with that.
Yeah, and I know you've done the same, like where it's like you have a completed book ready to go.
Yep.
And to me, that's where I want to be, just for the customer element of it. Like I would rather have it ready to go, be able to guarantee that it's going to happen. But outside of that, it's like there's this nice space, and I've seen this work, like at least for myself, where I usually will kind of just start thinking like about weird, pre-planning type stuff, and eventually it happens, and a lot of it's just kind of visualizing it, not like The Secret or anything like that. It's just, I think it helps to visualize that kind of thing before you go into it. Because by the time I'm done, even if like 80% of the product can't happen, or maybe it takes a year longer to get into the conventions because I'm going to be signing in and signing up late, maybe the books cost more, maybe the printer I'm going to use goes out of business. But regardless, I've done a lot of pre-planning in my head. And so I view it as almost like psychologically preparing for something I've been through before, and is actually pretty exciting,
Yeah.
Sure.
So I don't know. I mean, I think we're almost at 11:30, so we've been going almost a couple hours. So
yeah.
So I don't know if there's anything we want to say to wrap it up. I mean, if there's any point that we were trying to get at, or
Well, Scott, I feel like you should wrap this a little bit because I think that I want to know, just wrapping it up, like your experience at Phoenix. Is this something you do again? Are you optimistic about the future of conventions? What's your like takeaway from it?
Yeah, I mean, and again, it's a weird thing because, like I said, I mean, for most people, the con they didn't do as well, and it was a down year. But with the changes and things I made, I did really well, and I think I can continue on and figure, now that I kind of know things that are working, I can kind of focus on those things and do more of those things. And so yeah, definitely, I'm definitely going to be back. And now I'm even maybe thinking about maybe doing some of these other things, other conventions, because there's a few different local conventions, and it's always been an issue with me because I don't do the fan art, and sometimes, I mean, it's difficult to get people into your work. But now that I'm kind of able to hopefully kind of bring people in, either with my pitch or whatever, the other stuff that I'm doing. And the other thing I really want to do is, because there are people out there that are making money that aren't doing fan art, and a lot of people just have super awesome artwork and everything. So one of the things might be that just as a whole, I might need to improve my artwork. That I think I like where I'm going as far as my mechs and things, but I think I really want to step up my prints and just do just really up my game as far as what my prints look like, and the quality and everything, and my composition and all that stuff. And I think I can, if I can tap into something that people are into that isn't necessarily part of a fandom, it looks really cool, just something that would just look awesome hanging up in your room or whatever. Because I see people that just do prints of like cats, and they'll sell a lot because people like cats. But you can't copyright a cat, or a generic cat or whatever. So I mean, there are things that people are into, and for my thing, it's kind of science or whatever. So I think I can do some things that people will like, even though it's not part of a fandom. And if I kind of step up my game as far as just the style of my artwork, and some of my art, I think I get a little complacent with, what I'm doing, and I kind of want to stretch my boundaries on that. So I kind of think it's less of the conventions and more of me needing to take charge, and I do that. I've done this in the past, and I will probably always continue to do it. But I'm always like, just like I said, I compare myself to the fan artist, but I really can't do that, because I mean, it's if I'm not going to do fan art, fine, but I can't use that as an excuse, is why I'm not selling things.
Yeah, that's a really good call. That's a great takeaway. What do you think, Gaz? Like, do you have any kind of last minute thoughts, suggestions, takeaways from conventions?
Well, I think I've expressed a lot of my opinions, but I'm also in a flux period, and I also do kind of a hybrid where I am doing fan art, but I'm also trying to push my own stuff, and it's a balancing act. And I don't know if this is advice I would give to anybody, but it's just what I'm going to be doing is, like I said, each show I'm going to think of as an individual show and think about what my goal is there, to make money, to gain new fans, to find clients, to push my book. And then I'm going to go into it thinking that and make adjustments based on the goal for that specific show. And that's my plan for this year. And to see if I can have a more successful year, that even if I don't make more money, maybe I will meet more goals of selling books or getting new clients or whatever the goal is for that show.
Awesome. Okay. The only thing I'll say is just like, honestly, to anybody out there conventioning, and especially people making original work like you guys and you, Scott, it's like, dude, just congrats for like getting out there and like having made stuff and actually hustling and trying to get your stuff out there. Like that's a huge thing. And that's definitely, especially for people who are kind of, maybe even heading into territory where they might be heading to their first convention. Mm-hmm. Like, if you have a great show, great. If you have a crappy show, I have friends who kill it. Like they clean up at conventions. and have massive spaces at like San Diego Comic-Con, and yet started the same way we all did with like a bad show, you know?
Yeah.
So honestly, that's to me, like, that's the takeaway. I'll also, just from tacking on to what Scott was saying, like, a lot of the time, I like, for instance, I was making comics that I was really unhappy with, and it took me a while to just kind of realize, like, oh, I just have to take more time on my work, like, because I can make the pages that I want in the style that I want at the quality that I want. I just am not spending the time, and it took me a lot of times trying to find like weird shortcuts around it. And at the end of the day, what I ended up with was I just have to spend more time. So.
I have to touch on that because absolutely true for you and true for a lot of people. But I think you got to be careful because you could go the other way, which is what happens to me a lot, where I want it to be better and I redraw it 50,000 times and I pull out reference and then I scrap the page and start over. And suddenly I've been working on one page for 3 days and it's gotten 5% better than when I started.
Yeah.
So while you don't want to rush it and you want to put the time in for sure, at some point that's as good as you can draw right now.
Yeah.
So you got to just let it go and move on.
Yeah, for sure. Cool. All right. So I guess that'll do it. Do you want to? I'll let people know where to find me. You're on my channel. You can also check out. I should probably mention. So me and Corey Kerr are doing this 48-hour art check thing, which is like every other day, alternating between our two channels, where we're kind of checking in on each other to kind of make sure that we're progressing on our work. And I encourage you guys to like kind of join in and do it. Find an art buddy and do a similar thing. I know that Gaz just recently.
Oh yeah, I saw that with you and Mike today. That was cool.
Yeah. Mike Emmerich, Art, and I, creator of Space Cat, I said that like Yoda. We were inspired by your show and we thought it was a great idea. The only thing is we couldn't commit to doing it every 2 days. So we do it instead of every 48 hours, we do it every 168 hours, which is once a week.
Love it.
Yeah, I got to jump in on that if I can ever get my stupid camera thing to work. So I got to find somebody to do that with, maybe. Yeah, I think if I was going to do it, I'd probably have to do it weekly too. But yeah, it's a cool thing. It'd be nice if it kind of takes off. I'd love to see more people do that. It's cool.
I'll also say it's a great next step after the 100 Days of Making Comics Challenge, which a lot of us are veterans of. And I feel like most people watching know, but just in case you don't, the 100 Days of Making Comics Challenge is 100 days in a row, 30 minutes at least each day, working on your own personal comic project, not client work, and you have to document it, usually with videos daily. It's a tough challenge, but once you've done it once or twice, it gets a lot easier. And then doing the videos becomes the problem, not doing the work. So this challenge that you've created, where it's less of a challenge and more of a checking in with an art buddy, it's almost like having a sponsor. You know what I mean? Like, are you doing your work? I'm going to hold you accountable. And then you share it with other people. And I really feel like this is, I don't think it would be good if you didn't already have the discipline to work on your art, but once you're in that groove, it's a good like secondary next step. And so I'm really glad you guys started it and we started doing it as well.
Yeah, if I do it, I think I'm going to call it Artist Anonymous.
Yeah, that's actually something I said the first episode is the thinking behind it is pretty much AA for artists, because we have this sick addiction, and instead of encouraging people to stay off of comics, we're trying to keep our buddies on comics, on creating art. So Scott.
Yes.
Oh wait, we should have you wrap up last. So Gaz, where can everybody find your arts and other cool stuff and great prints and your Power Ranger stuff, like all the stuff you mentioned during this? Where can people find it?
Well, as I said earlier, I'm Gazbot Online. I have a YouTube channel. You could watch the show I was just talking about with Mike Emmerich. I have an Etsy store under Gazbot. You could find most of my prints. I do take commissions. You could contact me on any social media to talk about that. And the next show I'll be doing is the San Jose Toy Show, but the next big show I'll be doing is G-Fest, which is the annual Godzilla Festival in Chicago, Illinois, and that will be this summer.
That's so rad.
Have you done that show before?
I did it 2 years ago, but I missed last year. Yeah.
That
so
just
my
sounds.
turn, or did you go get it, Josh?
Oh, I was just saying that just sounds like super fun to attend.
Yeah.
Much like,
You know what's the sad part is, because I am a Godzilla fan. That's why I do the art. And while I have attended it, I haven't attended it because I sat at my table the entire time
Yeah.
and I was by myself. So they had celebrity guests and cool workshops on how to, film movies and all kinds of awesome stuff that I did not see and won't see this year either.
That's the same with like me at Phoenix. I never get to go to any of the panels or do any of the other stuff.
Yeah.
And so
yeah, I always feel like you're at a convention, you're slightly living vicariously through the people who stop by your booth.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. What did you
Sometimes
say?
you're just like, what's this thing everybody's carrying around? What is this thing? Where'd you get it? You know?
Absolutely true.
All right, Scott, why don't you take us out?
all right, yeah. So you can find me at circworks.com. You can find me at Circworks on YouTube. You can find me at Circworks on Facebook and Instagram. And yeah, now that this convention's over, hopefully I'll get more work done on my comic. I mean, that's the next thing. I want to finish this 4th issue up, run the Kickstarter. Plus, there's a whole bunch of other stuff that I'm going to be doing. So hopefully it'll be interesting. I just got to get back in the groove. But if you want to know what I'm up to as far as on that front, just follow me on social media. And also, so a little bit about this show. So this show switches between my channel and Josh's channel. So if you want to know where we're going to be, we have a newsletter, and we just send that out about 30 minutes ahead of whenever we're going to go live, just to let you know if we're going to be on Josh's channel or my channel or what time. Because sometimes we do it on different days, usually on a Thursday. Today it's on a Wednesday. But it all depends. And if you want to know when it's going to be or when it's not, like last week I should have sent out a newsletter saying that we weren't going to do it, but it was kind of like last minute thing. I was super busy with the con. But anyway, if you want to know what's going on, just sign up for our newsletter. There's a link in the description, and you will be in the know.
Sweet. All right. Bye.
Goodbye.
Bye-bye, Power Rangers. Bye-bye.